A warning before we start. This episode contains serious allegations of crimes committed against a child. From The Australian, here's What's on the Front. I'm Kristen Amiot. It's Thursday, July 11. Gas isn't part of the plan. That's what investors can expect to take away from a draft classification framework produced by the government. But it's at odds with the message from the Australian energy market operator, which says gas is a vital part of building up the nation's arsenal of renewables. Labor politicians have been told to keep cost of living relief front and centre, and the party's leadership wants members to leave the nuclear debate to them. The direction comes as the coalition gears up for a possible early election. Those stories are live right now at theaustralian.com.au. An 8-year-old girl suffered for days and ultimately died because her Christian fundamentalist parents allegedly withheld life-saving medical care. The extraordinary 14-defendant trial for the alleged murder of Elizabeth Struhs is underway in Brisbane, with dozens of witnesses expected to be called in the 3-month proceedings. That's today's episode. Eight-year-old Elizabeth Rose Struhs had a big, toothy grin and long dark hair, usually pulled back in pigtails. She also had type 1 diabetes, a chronic health condition where the pancreas doesn't produce enough insulin. It's a hormone that kind of works like a door, letting sugar into our cells to produce energy. There's no cure, but type 1 diabetes is manageable. It can lead to serious health concerns and even death if it's left untreated. Elizabeth Struhs told her school friends she wanted to be a doctor so she could help other kids just like her. But she never got the chance. She died on January 7 in 2022 at her home in Ridgeville, on Toowoomba's outer eastern suburbs, after her parents, Jason Richard Struhs and his wife Kerry Elizabeth, allegedly withheld her insulin. They said they believed God would provide.
The tragic twist in a crime that shocked the nation. 8-year-old Elizabeth Struhs was allegedly left to die by her parents who thought God would heal her. Now we can reveal authorities knew about the family's dangerous beliefs and could have prevented the young girl's death.
2 years before she died, Elizabeth Struhs became seriously ill. She was losing weight from her little frame and drinking excessive amounts of water. She was tired all the time, telltale signs of type 1 diabetes. Her mother, Kerry, kept her at home, moving her around on a chair with wheels when she became too weak to walk, and proclaiming her belief that God would make her daughter better. By the time Elizabeth's father, Jason, took her to hospital, she was in a coma and weighed less than 15 kilos. After a month-long stint in hospital where she was never visited by her mother, she was diagnosed with diabetes and her family was told she'd need daily insulin injections to manage the condition. 2 years later, in 2021, Jason Struhs was handed a 6-month suspended prison sentence after he pleaded guilty to failing to provide the necessities of life to his young daughter. His wife, Kerry, went to trial where her husband gave evidence against her, and a jury found her guilty on the same charge. She received an 18-month prison sentence and was released shortly before Christmas of that year. Less than a month later, her daughter Elizabeth, having previously made a remarkable recovery, would be dead. Jason Struhs was charged with Elizabeth's murder within days on January 11, while his wife Kerry was arrested on the lesser charge of manslaughter. But in an unbelievable twist, 12 more people were arrested during an early morning police raid in mid-2022 and charged with the same offences in relation to Elizabeth's death.
The reason why that we're here this morning is I have a warrant that's been issued under the Police Powers and Responsibilities Act to search this dwelling in relation to property, okay?
We've been talking about Toowoomba a lot lately on the front. Just last week, the former Liberal staffer Bruce Lehrman was committed to stand trial there on 2 counts of rape relating to an incident that's alleged to have occurred in 2021.
Bruce Lehrman's lawyers fought to have his charges thrown out, but a magistrate decided there is enough evidence for him to stand trial.
Bruce Lehrman has denied those claims. Toowoomba is a couple of hours' drive west of Brisbane. It's the country's second biggest inland city, and it's famed for its sprawling gardens and heritage architecture. It has an affluent side, wealthy retirees who come here for the warm weather and the slower pace. But there are also those who aren't so well off, and parts of town where crime is rife. Somewhere in the middle, a small fringe religious group known as the Saints emerged. They're strict followers of the King James Bible. It's an early English translation of the Bible that was commissioned in the 17th century by King James VI for the Church of England, though it's still a favourite of Christian fundamentalists. The Saints group isn't affiliated with an established church and has just 23 members from 3 families. The small, tight-knit congregation is led by 62-year-old Brendan Luke Stevens, his wife Loretta Mary Stevens by his side. Elizabeth Struhs' mother, Kerry, has been a member of the group for about 2 decades, though her husband, Jason, was only baptised in the months before his daughter's death. Her older sister, Jade, left home at 16 years old after coming out as gay. She talked about her experience with the Saints in an episode of A Current Affair, saying Christmas celebrations were forbidden and mainstream healthcare was shunned by the group.
Well, no medical intervention was very early on. It was God heals.
At a Queensland Supreme Court hearing held in May, Crown Prosecutor Caroline Marco reiterated the group's suspicions of medical interventions. A voice actor is reading her words spoken in court.
They believe that God heals and that medication is to be rejected unless it is in the nature of no more than first aid, such as applying a Band-Aid.
The Crown alleges the group encouraged the Struhs to withhold Elizabeth's life-saving insulin in accordance with those religious beliefs. The 14 congregation members appeared in the Queensland Supreme Court in Brisbane yesterday, where they're facing trial as a group. Coming up, how this incredible proceeding unfolded in a packed Queensland courtroom. Subscribers to The Australian get this kind of in-depth reporting and analysis around the clock, along with breaking news alerts, newsletters, special events and lively commentary. Join us at theaustralian.com.au and we'll be back after this break. Courtroom 16 of the Queensland Supreme Court has never seen a trial quite like this one. Information sent to media ahead of Wednesday's hearing warned those planning to attend that seating in the public gallery would be limited. That's because the space had to be reconfigured in order to accommodate the large number of defendants, 14 in total. Leader of the Saints religious group, Brendan Stevens, is charged with Elizabeth Struhs' murder, along with her father, Jason Struhs. Stephen's wife Loretta and their 6 adult children, Acacia, Therese, Sebastian, Andrea, Camelia and Alexander, are all charged with manslaughter, as are Elizabeth's mother, Kerry Struhs, and her older brother, Zachary. Another couple, Lachlan and Samantha Schoenfish, also face manslaughter charges, along with congregation member Keita Martin. The group are representing themselves at trial, and none of the defendants entered a plea when the proceedings got underway just after 2 p.m. The presiding judge, Supreme Court Justice Martin Burns, then instructed not guilty pleas to be entered on each of the defendants' behalf. Because they've repeatedly declined legal representation, the judge said he was obligated to give them enough information to ensure they received a fair trial.
But I cannot provide you with legal advice.
A voice actor reading Justice Burns' words from court there. Prosecutor Caroline Marco opened the Crown's case by laying out what it believes to be the circumstances of Elizabeth Struhs' final days. Her official cause of death was diabetic ketoacidosis, essentially fatally high blood sugar. The prosecutor said the little girl would have suffered for days, vomiting, enduring extreme lethargy, and slipping in and out of consciousness.
She was described as speaking little, needed help going to the toilet, and being incontinent.
Marco alleged Elizabeth lay dying on a mattress on a tiled floor while her parents slept upstairs. She was being cared for by 3 other members of the Saints group at the time. She said Elizabeth's parents were well aware of the consequences of withholding her insulin after a near-death experience in 2019. The prosecutor also alleged Jason Struhs wasn't convinced by the Saints' beliefs surrounding medical care, but committed to the group in order to preserve his family connections.
Mr. Jason Struhs knew that if he did not change, he would lose his wife and family.
The prosecutor will seek to prove the Saints congregation, including his wife Kerry, put pressure on Jason to conform.
Notwithstanding Jason Struhs' resistance, his wife and each of the other defendants united in a mission to persuade him to adhere to all aspects of their faith, including the fundamental tenet that God heals. And by the sustained pressure they placed upon him to conform, they succeeded in managing to convince him not to administer or require Elizabeth to take insulin, and not to obtain medical care or treatment for her consistent with the extreme beliefs of their faith.
Still, Caroline Marco said Elizabeth's parents ultimately jointly agreed to cease her medical care.
She was just 8 years old when she died. She was too young to understand the dire consequences to withdraw the insulin, which she ultimately paid for with the cost of her life.
The trial is expected to run for 3 months and will be heard by Supreme Court Justice Martin Burns alone. Crown Prosecutor Caroline Marco indicated she'll call 60 witnesses, including Elizabeth Struhs' older sister, Jade. Marco says Jade will share her experience growing up under the group's dogged belief that God heals all.
In accordance with that belief, they were instructed to call God to heal them at all times of sickness rather than rely on doctors and medicine, which were created by man.
When she spoke with A Current Affair in late 2023, Jade expressed her regret about her little sister's continued involvement with the group.
She was just a young, bubbly, energetic soul that was always happy and pure at heart. If I had any inkling of knowing what was going to happen, I would have banged that door down.
The trial returns to Brisbane's Supreme Court on Thursday. You can keep up to date with all our reporting at theaustralian.com.au.